The Great Hall was the most important room in the galaxy. It was a circle of pure white stone that reached up into a ceiling so high it was lost in a soft, glowing light. In the air, the symbols of 1,000 different alien races floated slowly, turning like leaves on a quiet pond. The room was filled with beings from every corner of the known universe. There were tall insect-like thuls with their shiny black shells and quiet clicking sounds. There were furry zillions from the cold northern spiral, their 4 eyes watching everything at once. There were even the plant-like florins, standing so still they seemed to be part of the hall's decoration. They were all there for one reason: the choosing. For thousands of years, the galactic consensus had been ruled by a single leader. This leader was not chosen by vote or by war. They were chosen by the sacred scanner. The scanner was a machine of incredible age and power. It could look into the soul of every living thing in the galaxy. It searched for the one being who was the most wise, the most balanced, the most fit to lead. This being was called the Prime Soul. The current monarch, an old thul named Cathar, was dying. His long life of peaceful rule was ending. His large dark eyes were calm, but his body was slow and tired. He sat on a simple stone chair in the center of the hall waiting. 3 figures stood near the chair. They were the ones everyone thought the scanner would pick. First was Lorvan, the Xelian scientist. His fur was the color of snow, and his 4 eyes held a sharp intelligence. He had solved the great energy crisis of the Cygnus arm. He believed in logic and data above all else. Second was Vorax, the Vorg warrior queen. She was tall and strong with skin like red stone. She had united the violent Vorg clans through strength and fear. She believed that power was the only true language in the universe. Third was Maya, the Mycelian philosopher. She looked almost human, but her skin had a soft, glowing pattern like forest moss. She could calm entire riots with a few quiet words. She believed in peace and connection. The air hummed with a deep, quiet energy. All across the galaxy, on billions of worlds and ships, screens were lit up. Every citizen of the consensus was watching. This was the most important moment of the century. A soft, deep chime sounded through the hall. The time had come. The sacred scanner began to wake. It was not a large machine. It was a simple, dark sphere that floated above the old monarch's head. It started to glow with a soft blue light. The light pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Cathar, the old monarch, spoke, his voice a dry whisper that was amplified for all to hear. The scanner seeks. It will find the light that can guide us through the coming dark. Be still and witness. The blue light from the scanner grew brighter. It reached out, not as a single beam, but as a wave of energy that moved through the entire hall, through the planet, and then out, faster than light, across the whole galaxy. It was searching, tasting the essence of trillions upon trillions of lives. On the screens, images flashed. They saw the brilliant, complex mind of Lorvan, his thoughts like a beautiful, endless clockwork. They saw the fierce, burning spirit of Vorax, a star of pure will. They saw the deep, calm pool of Maya's consciousness connected to all living things. The light lingered on each of them. This was what everyone expected. The next monarch would be one of these 3 great beings. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the light to settle. But it did not settle. The light pulled back from the 3 candidates. It hesitated. A confused murmur went through the crowd. The blue energy of the scanner seemed to sharpen, to focus more intently. It was like a person who had lost their keys, searching more and more desperately. Then it shot out of the hall. It flew through space, past the core worlds, past the busy trade routes, past the frontier colonies. It raced toward a quiet, lesser-known spiral arm of the galaxy. It ignored planets of great cities and advanced civilizations. It headed for a small blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. A world called Earth. The view on every screen in the galaxy changed. It showed a small, simple building on the edge of a city made of steel and glass. The sign on the building had strange, blocky writing. It was a public library. Inside, the light of the scanner swept through rows of paper books. It was a quiet, peaceful place. The light moved past people reading at tables. It ignored a man arguing loudly on a small communication device. It moved toward the back of the room to the shelves where the books were kept. There, a young man was working. His name was June. He was wearing simple blue pants and a white shirt. He was placing books back onto their correct shelves. He was not a king, a general, or a scientist. He was a librarian. He was helping an old woman. She looked confused, holding a piece of paper with a title written on it, "I can't find it, June," she said, her voice weak. "My eyes are not so good anymore." June gave her a warm, kind smile. "It is no problem, Mrs. Lee. I know where it is." He took the paper from her gently. He led her a few steps down the aisle, his movements calm and patient. He reached up to a high shelf and pulled down a thin book. "Here it is. The poetry collection you wanted." He handed her the book. His hands were careful. His whole attention was on her. He was not thinking about galactic politics or quantum physics. He was thinking about helping one old woman find a book she loved. At that exact moment, the scanner's light, which had been washing over the entire scene, suddenly snapped into a tight, brilliant beam. It shone directly on June. In the great hall, a life-sized hologram of June appeared. He was frozen in the moment of handing the book to the old woman, a look of simple kindness on his face. A silence fell. It was a silence so deep and so complete it felt like a physical thing. The thools stopped clicking. The Zillion's 4 eyes went wide with shock. Vorax, the warrior queen, took a step back, her stone-like face showing confusion for the first time in her life. Then, the voice of the sacred scanner filled the hall. It was a calm, clear voice without any emotion. It spoke the words that would break the galaxy's understanding of reality. The Prime Soul is identified. The Monarch is June of Earth. In the library, June looked up startled. The world around him dissolved into a blinding blue light. The book fell from his hand. Mrs. Lee gasped and reached for him, but he was already gone. In the great hall, the hologram vanished. The real June, still in his simple clothes, stumbled onto the cold white stone floor where the great candidate stood. He blinked, his eyes struggling to adjust to the impossible grandeur around him. He saw the insect-like faces, the furry faces, the plant-like beings all staring at him in a mixture of horror and utter disbelief. He looked small. He looked ordinary. He looked completely, terrifyingly human. The galaxy had found its new monarch. And in that single silent moment as they looked upon their new king, the first fine crack appeared in the sanity of every civilization that was watching. The light faded from a blinding blue to the soft, steady glow of the great hall. June felt the cold, smooth stone beneath his hands and knees. For a moment he thought he had fainted in the library. The smell of old paper and Mrs. Lee's faint perfume was gone, replaced by a strange, clean scent he could not name. He pushed himself up. His simple clothes felt thin and out of place. He blinked, and the world came into a terrible, impossible focus. He was surrounded by giants, monsters, and living plants. Towering insect-like creatures with glossy black shells and clicking mandibles stared down at him. A being covered in white fur with 4 piercing eyes watched his every move. A woman with skin of red stone and a face of carved anger looked ready to break him in half. They were all silent. The silence was heavier than any sound he had ever heard. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was a dream. A very bad, very detailed dream. An old, tired-looking insectoid being sat on a simple stone chair. It was the only thing in the room that looked familiar in its purpose. The old being gestured with a frail, multi-jointed limb. "Rise, Monarch." Its voice was a dry whisper, yet it filled the vast space. June stood on shaky legs. I think there's been a mistake," he said, his voice small in the enormous hall. "My name is June. I work at the library." The whisper came again. "There is no mistake. The scanner has spoken. You are the Prime Soul. You are the Monarch." The old being, Cathar, then closed his eyes as if the effort of speaking had drained the last of his life. His body went still. A deep chime echoed through the hall. The old monarch was gone. Before June could process this, 2 figures approached him. They were humanoid, but their movements were too smooth, too perfect. Their faces showed no expression. "They were androids, Your Majesty," one of them said in a flat voice. "The coronation must proceed." They guided him, their grips firm but not painful, toward the stone chair. He was too stunned to resist. They sat him down. The stone was cold. The dark sphere that had brought him here, the scanner, floated down towards his head. He flinched, but it was too fast. A circle of cool, living metal settled onto his brow. It was a crown. The moment the crown touched him, his mind exploded. It was not pain. It was information. A river of data, an ocean of knowledge flooded into his thoughts. He saw star charts and population reports, economic theories and historical records of wars fought 10,000 years before humans had learned to write. He saw the names of 1 million alien species, their biology, their cultures. The crown was a direct link to all the knowledge of the galactic consensus. He gasped, his hands gripping the arms of the stone chair. The flood was overwhelming, but after a moment of panic he found he could swim in it. He could understand it. The crown was translating, simplifying, making the impossible knowledge accessible. He knew, without knowing how he knew, that the insectoid was a Thule, the furry one a Zillion, the angry one a Vorg. He also knew, with a sinking feeling, that they all thought this was a catastrophe. The ceremony ended. The androids led him away from the hall, through corridors that shifted and changed shape as they walked. They brought him to a room, or perhaps it was a ship that was to be his new home. It was vast and beautiful, with walls that showed a live view of the galaxy outside, stars and nebulae drifting past. It was also completely empty. There was no furniture he recognized, no bed, no kitchen. It was a museum of silence. A figure stood waiting for him. She was human, or looked it. She had sharp, focused features and dark hair pulled tightly back. She wore a uniform of gray and silver. She stood perfectly straight, her hands behind her back. "I am Sue," she said. Her voice was crisp and clear but held no warmth. "I am the commander of the Royal Guard. I am responsible for your safety." June just nodded, still feeling the echo of the galaxy's knowledge in his skull. His first day as Monarch was a parade of confusion. The androids brought him a meal. It was a single gray cube on a silver plate. It was flavorless and chewy. He ate it because he was hungry, but it made him miss the simple kimchi and rice from home. Then his advisors arrived. Lorvan the Zillion, Vorax the Vorg, and Maya the Mycelian entered his chamber. They stood before him, their postures showing a mix of disdain and curiosity. Lorvan spoke first. "Your Majesty," he said, the title sounding like an insult, "we have a critical issue. The quantum entangled resource distribution network between the Cygnus and Orion arms is experiencing a 17% efficiency loss. My analysis suggests a recalibration of the Heisenberg compensators, but this requires a complex rewrite of the underlying—" June held up a hand. The words were English, but the meaning was a jumble. He understood the individual concepts through the crown, but the problem felt distant, abstract. He thought of the library's old computer, which sometimes froze. The solution was never a complex rewrite. It was to turn it off and on again, or to check if a cable was loose. He interrupted the scientist. "I'm sorry," June said. "Can you explain it more simply? What is the network for?" Lorvan blinked his 4 eyes. "It is for distributing raw materials, metals, crystals, fuel." "And the people on both ends?" June asked. "The ones who need these things. Do they say they are not getting enough?" Lorvan was silent for a moment. "We monitor their consumption metrics. We do not ask them. Wouldn't it be simpler to just ask the miners on both ends what they need most?" June said. "Maybe one side needs more fuel and the other needs more food. The problem might not be in the wires." A look of pure horror spread across Lorvan's furry face. "Simplicity is not a valid parameter. The system is built on precise quantum logic. We cannot base galactic policy on asking," June sighed. "It seems like a good place to start." Next was Vorax. She stepped forward, her redstone skin scraping slightly as she moved. "The relic faction grows bold," she growled. "They test our borders. They have small, fast ships that harass our trade routes. I request permission to dispatch 3 battle groups to their home system. We will glass their primary world. It will be a lesson." June felt a cold chill. "Glass their world? You mean destroy it? Kill everyone?" "It is the language they understand," Vorax said, her eyes burning. "Power. You don't hit someone just because they might throw a punch," June said, repeating something his grandfather had told him. "You try to talk first. Can we send them a message? Can we meet with them?" Vorax stared at him as if he had suggested they all start dancing. "Talk, they will see it as weakness. It will invite more attacks. Or it might stop a war before it starts," June replied softly. Finally, Maya stepped forward. She was calm, but her moss-like skin pulsed with a faint, troubled light. "Your Majesty, there is a dispute on a shared world between the Florins and the Thules. The Thules' sonic communications interfere with the Florins' photosynthetic rhythms. It is a deep spiritual conflict." June thought about this. Can the Thules use a different type of communication? Or can the Florins move to a part of the planet with less noise? Maya shook her head gently. The Thul's technology is fundamental to their society. The Florins are rooted to that land for religious reasons. It is a conflict of core identities. June was quiet for a long moment. He looked out at the stars on his wall. He thought about people in his neighborhood who argued over a noisy dog or a tree whose branches hung over a fence. The solution was never perfect, but it started with listening. "Bring them here," June said. "Not their leaders. Bring a normal Thul worker and a normal Florin. Let them sit in the same room. Let them tell each other what it's like. Maybe if they see each other as people and not as problems, they can find a way." Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. She gave a slow, respectful nod and left without another word. The others left too, their disapproval hanging in the air. Across the galaxy, the news networks went wild. The headlines were not kind. "The Simpleton King," one broadcast declared. "First act, ask and talk," another mocked. The galaxy was losing its mind. Their perfect logical system, guided by the most advanced intelligence imaginable, had chosen a leader who offered the solutions of a child. He suggested asking questions. He proposed talking to enemies. He wanted people to just get along. It was madness. It was illogical. It was, to the civilized galaxy, completely and utterly insane. And he was their monarch. The days turned into a cycle of frustration. June lived in a golden cage. His every need was met by the silent androids, but his spirit felt starved. The food was still bland, the rooms were still empty, and the problems brought to him were still wrapped in layers of impossible complexity. He tried. He truly did. The crown fed him data, but it could not give him wisdom. It showed him star charts, but it could not show him a path through the stubborn pride of his advisors. He sat through a meeting about a farming colony on a distant world. The report was 100 pages long. It was filled with graphs about soil depletion and atmospheric pressure. The request was for a new, more powerful water recycler. The cost was enormous. The procedure to approve it would take months. June read the report through the crown. He saw all the data, but he also saw something else. He saw a single sentence buried deep in the report. It was a note from a low-level technician. It said the old recycler had a simple filter that was always getting clogged. The filter could not be cleaned, only replaced. The replacement parts were no longer made. June looked at the head of the agricultural guild, a being with a face like a friendly potato. "Why don't we just make new filters?" June asked. "It says here that's the real problem." The potato being blinked its many eyes. "Your Majesty, the recycler is a Mark 7. The manufacturer ceased operations 500 cycles ago. Creating a new production line for a single obsolete part is not cost-effective. The proposal for a new Mark 12 recycler is the only logical path." "But the new recycler will take months to approve and install," June said, his voice tight. "What do the farmers do now? How do they get water today?" "That is a local logistics issue," the guild head said smoothly. "It is not within the scope of this committee." June felt a hot anger rise in his chest. He pushed it down. He was a librarian, not a king. He took a deep breath. He thought of the people. He always thought of the people. The data in the crown was about systems and numbers, but he could feel the thirst of the farmers. He could imagine their worry. That night he couldn't sleep. He stood before the wall that showed the galaxy, a tapestry of 1 billion stars. Each star was a sun. Each sun had planets. Each planet had people. And he was trapped here, unable to help any of them. The bureaucracy was a wall he could not climb. His guard, Sue, stood at her post by the door. She was always there, a silent statue of duty. He had tried to talk to her a few times, but her answers were short and professional. She was watching him. He knew she thought he was a mistake. He turned to her. "Commander Sue," he said, "how does a normal person in the consensus get help? If they have a problem?" Sue did not turn her head. "They follow the established procedures, Your Majesty. They file a request with their local administrator. The request moves up the chain of command. And if the request is ignored, or if it's too small for the chain of command, then it is not a matter for the government," she replied, her tone final. June looked back at the stars. That was the heart of the problem. The government was a giant, slow-moving machine that only noticed other giant things. It did not see the small people. It did not hear the quiet voices. He knew what he had to do. It was a crazy idea. It would make everyone angry. But it felt right. It felt human. The next morning, he summoned his council. Lorvan, Vorax, and the other important leaders stood before him. Their faces were blank, expecting another foolish question. "I have made a decision," June said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "I am issuing my first edict." A wave of tension went through the room. An edict from the Monarch was law. It could not be easily challenged. Lorvan leaned forward. "You have a solution for the quantum network, Your Majesty?" "No," June said. "This is something else." He took a breath. "I call it the Edict of the Open Door. Once every cycle, any citizen of the consensus may present one question to me, directly, in person." The silence in the room was absolute. It was more shocking than if he had declared war. Vorax was the first to break it. "Impossible," she roared. "It is a security nightmare. An assassin could easily get close to you." "The scanner crown would stop any direct attack," June said calmly. He had checked this with the crown's knowledge. "It has protective fields." "It is an inefficient use of your time," Lorvan protested, his 4 eyes wide with horror. "You would spend your days listening to complaints about broken machinery and noisy neighbors. You are the Monarch. You must think about the galaxy." "That is exactly what I am doing," June said. "I am thinking about the people who live in it. The edict is not a debate, it is my command." The council was furious, but they were powerless. The crown on June's head glowed softly, confirming his authority. The edict was now the law of the land. The news spread across the galaxy like a shockwave. The simpleton king was now the mad king. He was going to waste the most powerful office in the galaxy on listening to petty problems. The day of the first open door arrived. The event was broadcast everywhere. The Great Hall was packed with dignitaries and media. They were all waiting for a disaster. June sat on the stone chair. He felt nervous. Sue stood beside him, her hand resting on the weapon at her hip. Her eyes scanned the crowd, looking for any threat. The first citizen was called. A timid, plant-like floran was led forward. It moved slowly, its leaves trembling. It stopped a safe distance from June. "Your Majesty," the floran said, its voice a soft rustle. "My name is Pilar. I am from the farming colony on Viridia." June leaned forward, trying to look encouraging. "Hello, Pilar. What is your question?" The floran's leaves shook. "My photosynthesis is dimming. The tax on the supplemental light is too high. My family cannot afford it. We are living in the shade. Why is the light so expensive?" A murmur of disbelief went through the crowd. This was it? This was the great issue the Monarch would address? A complaint about a light bill? June did not look at the crowd. He looked at Pilar. He saw the fear in the being's slow movements. He understood that for Pilar this was a matter of life and death. June turned his head slightly. The crown provided the information instantly. He looked at the Treasury Minister, a tall, thin being who looked like a walking stick. "Minister," June said. His voice was calm but firm. "Is this true? Is the tax on supplemental light too high for the farmers on Viridia?" The minister shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, the tax is based on energy consumption quotas. It is designed to promote efficiency." The economic models clearly show. June interrupted him. He didn't raise his voice. "I did not ask for the models. I asked if it is true. Are the farmers struggling to pay for light?" The minister hesitated. He saw the eyes of the galaxy upon him. The data suggests some localized financial pressure, yes." June looked back at Pilar, then at the minister. "No one should live in the dark. Fix it. Lower the tax for the agricultural zones on Viridia. Today." The minister's mouth opened and closed. He wanted to argue. He wanted to explain about budgets and models. But he saw the look in June's eyes. It was not the look of a king giving an order. It was the look of a man who had seen an injustice and would not look away. The minister bowed his head. "It will be done, Your Majesty." On the screen, the entire galaxy watched as Pilar the Floron bowed deeply, its leaves rustling with a new, happy energy. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you." June simply nodded. "You are welcome, Pilar." The broadcast ended. The galaxy was silent again, but this was a different kind of silence. It was not the silence of shock or horror. It was the silence of thought. In a small apartment on a crowded world, a factory worker watched the screen. No one in the government had ever listened to him. He had always been a number, but the king had listened to a simple farmer. On a starship, a pilot watched the replay. She had always followed the chain of command. She had never questioned it. But the king had questioned a minister right to his face for a single citizen. The Mad King had done something no monarch had ever done. He had held someone accountable, not an enemy, not a rival, a minister, for a problem so small it had been invisible to the government. It was a small crack in a very large dam. And for the first time, a few people in the galaxy began to wonder if this madness was not so mad after all. The open-door sessions continued. June listened to problems about broken heating units, unfair work schedules, and children being bullied for their strange appearances. He solved them not with grand decrees, but by making one official make a call, or by asking another department to check their records. The galaxy's media was fascinated and confused. They called him the Mechanic King, fixing small broken parts of the universe while the great engines of state were ignored. But the weight of it all was crushing him. He was surrounded by aliens who saw him as a puzzle or a problem. He lived in rooms that were beautiful but felt like a prison. He missed the smell of rain on pavement. He missed the sound of a familiar language spoken with warmth, not just the perfect translation of the crown. He missed the feeling of soil. One day, after a long session listening to complaints, he turned to Sue. She was still his silent shadow, her opinion of him hidden behind a mask of duty. "Commander Sue," he said, his voice tired, "I need some things." "Whatever you require, Your Majesty," she replied, her tone neutral. "I need soil. Real soil from Earth and seeds. Vegetable seeds. Maybe some flower seeds, too. And a few simple tools, a trowel, a watering can." Sue stared at him. It was the first time her perfect composure broke. Her eyebrows twitched in confusion. "Soil? Your Majesty, the environmental systems provide perfectly balanced, sterile air. Introducing foreign biological material is a health risk. We can provide you with holographic nature simulations. They are very realistic." June shook his head. "No, I don't want a picture. I want the real thing. I want to feel it, please." Sue hesitated. The request was illogical. It was messy. It was beneath the dignity of a monarch. But it was also a direct order. "I will see what can be done," she said finally. It took time. The bureaucracy of the royal household was not designed for such simple things. But Sue was efficient. A few days later, a small sealed container arrived. Inside was a bag of dark, rich soil from a park in Korea. Another container held packets of seeds, lettuce, green onions, and a packet of morning glory flowers. A third contained a simple metal trowel and a plastic watering can. June's face lit up with a genuine smile for the first time since he had arrived. It was a sight Sue had never seen. He chose a corner of his vast living quarters where the light from the star-filled wall was brightest. He poured the soil into a large, shallow container the androids had provided. He didn't care that it wasn't a proper pot. With his own hands, he pushed the seeds into the dark earth. He patted the soil down gently. He filled the watering can and sprinkled water over his new garden. Sue watched him from her post. She saw him get dirt under his fingernails. She saw him wipe sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. This was the prime soul? This man on his knees, digging in dirt like a common farmer? It confirmed every suspicion she had. He was primitive. He did not belong here. Days turned into weeks. June's routine changed. He would hold his audiences. He would listen to the council's complex problems, and then he would return to his garden. He would check each seedling, whispering encouragement to them as they broke through the soil. The green onion sprouted first, thin and brave. Then the lettuce came, a rosette of soft green. The morning glories were slow, but they sent up delicate vines that he carefully guided along a small trellis. Sue continued to watch. It was her job to watch, but her watching became less about duty and more about curiosity. She saw the care he took. He never asked an android to water the plants. He did it himself every day. He would move the container a few inches to catch more light. He was nurturing them. It was an act of pure illogical creation in the heart of the most logical place in the galaxy. One afternoon, a high-pitched whine started to come from a console near June's garden. It was a power regulator for the room's environmental systems, a small, glowing crystal housed in a clear casing. The crystal was pulsing with an unstable, angry red light. Sue's training took over instantly. Her eyes snapped to the crystal. She recognized the model. It was known to fail, and when it did, it could explode with enough force to send shards of superheated material flying across the room. "Your Majesty," she shouted, her professional calm breaking. "Get down." She moved without thought, her body positioning itself between the Monarch and the potential threat. Her hand went to the energy weapon at her hip, but a weapon was useless against an explosion. But June was already moving. He didn't look at the crystal. He didn't look at her. His eyes went to his garden. He saw the fragile green seedlings, the tender vines. He saw the shards of crystal ripping through them, destroying the only thing in this place that felt like his. He didn't dive for cover. He didn't run away. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the large, heavy ceramic pot he had been using to mix soil. It was thick and sturdy. He lifted it, his movements sure and fast, and he placed it directly between the overheating crystal and his small patch of earth. He held it there, a human shield for his plants. There was a sharp crack, a sound of shattering energy. The crystal exploded. A wave of heat and force hit the ceramic pot. It shuddered in June's hands. Sharp, glowing shards peppered its surface, cracking it and melting tiny holes in the glaze. The force of the blast knocked June backwards onto the floor, but the pot held. Not a single piece of shrapnel reached the garden. The emergency systems engaged. A containment field snapped into place around the broken console. The angry red light died away. The room was silent again except for the hum of the force field. Sue stood frozen, her weapon half drawn. She looked from the shattered, smoking pot to June, who was sitting on the floor rubbing his shoulder where he had landed. He wasn't looking at her or the destroyed console. He was looking at his garden. A look of profound relief was on his face. The plants were safe. The androids glided into the room to assess the damage and assist the Monarch. June waved them away. "I'm fine," he said, getting to his feet. He walked over to his plants and gently touched a lettuce leaf, as if to reassure himself it was unharmed. Sue finally holstered her weapon. Her heart was beating fast, but not from the danger. It was from the shock of what she had just seen. He had not protected himself. He had not protected her, the royal guard. He had protected the plants. He had sacrificed himself for a handful of vegetables and flowers. It was the most illogical, reckless, and foolish act she had ever witnessed, and it was also the most brave. For the first time, she did not see a simpleton or a madman. She saw a different kind of strength, a strength that was not about fighting or dominating, but about protecting, a strength that came from a deep, caring heart. It was a strength her world had forgotten. She walked over to the broken pot. She knelt down and picked up a piece of the shattered ceramic. It was still warm. She looked at June, who was now carefully checking each plant for any damage. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. "Are you sure you are not hurt?" June looked up and gave her a small, tired smile. "I'm okay. The plants are okay. That's what matters." Sue looked at the piece of broken pot in her hand, then back at the man who had chosen to save a garden instead of himself. In that moment, the last of her contempt melted away. The galaxy called him mad. But Sue, the soldier, began to understand that his madness might be the only sane thing left. The galaxy was adjusting slowly and painfully to the rule of the Mechanic King. The open-door sessions became a regular, if bizarre, feature of galactic life. But the great powers, the old way of doing things, had not gone away. They were waiting for a real crisis, one that his simple solutions could not fix. That crisis arrived. The Corthan Syndicate, a race of large reptilian beings known for their fierce pride and quick tempers, had blockaded the planet Xylos. Xylos was a vital hub for trade, a crossroads for 100 different shipping lanes. The Corthan warships formed a tight, menacing ring around the world, their weapons powered and ready. In the War Council chamber, the atmosphere was tense. Vorax, the Vorg warrior queen, stood over a holographic map, a savage grin on her stone-like face. "This is what we have been waiting for," she declared, her voice a low rumble. "The Korthans have shown their teeth. We must show them our claws. I recommend dispatching the 2nd, 3rd, and 7th battle groups. We will smash their blockade and then glass their homeworld, Korth. They will learn the price of challenging the consensus." The military commanders nodded, their expressions grim, but agreeing. This was the language they understood. June sat at the head of the table, the scanner crown cool on his brow. The crown fed him data on fleet sizes, weapon yields, and projected casualties. The numbers were staggering. Millions would die on both sides. Xylos could be devastated in the crossfire. "This seems extreme," June said, his voice quiet in the room of warriors. "Extreme is the only thing they respect, Your Majesty," Vorax snapped. "Talk to them and they will see it as fear. They will demand more. They will become bolder. We must crush them now completely." June closed his eyes for a moment. He let the crown's data flow through him, but he did not look at the ships and the guns. He looked for something else. He looked for the why. He sifted through reports on Korthan biology, their history, their culture. He saw a proud people, yes, but also a people facing a disaster. He found it buried in an agricultural report from a year ago. A planet-wide blight had wiped out the Korthans' primary food source, a unique fungal symbiote that was essential to their digestion. Without it, they were slowly starving. Their aggression was not born of pure evil but of desperation. He opened his eyes. The generals and Vorax were looking at him, waiting for his order to attack. "I have a different plan," June said. Vorax scoffed. "Do you wish to ask them a question? To have an open door with their warlord?" "No," June said calmly. "I am giving an order. The Grand Fleet will stand down. They will not move from their current positions." A stunned silence filled the room. "You are surrendering Xylos?" One of the generals gasped. "No," June said. "I am saving it. And I'm saving Korth." He turned to the head of the science directorate, Lorvan, who was watching with his usual cold curiosity. "Director Lorvan, I want you to mobilize every available agricultural and xenobiology ship in the central sectors. Load them with high-nutrient emergency food supplies, and contact the mycelian philosophers. I want their best fungal experts on those ships." Lorvan's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. "For what purpose, Your Majesty? This is a military matter." "It is a hunger matter," June replied. "The Korthans are not evil. They are starving. You cannot reason with a starving being. You must feed them first." He turned to the hologram of the blockade. "The science ships are not to go to Xylos. They are to go directly to the Korthan homeworld. They are to bypass the blockade completely." This time the silence was broken by shouts of protest. "It is a trap," Vorax roared. "They will destroy the unarmed ships. It is a waste of lives and resources." "They will be confused," June said. "They are expecting warships. They are not expecting help." He looked at the faces around the table, faces full of anger and fear. "A man cannot hear your words if his children are starving. Feed them first, then we will talk." The order was given. The Crown's authority was absolute. Across the galaxy, the great warships of the consensus remained at their posts, their crews confused and restless. Meanwhile, a fleet of unarmed, slow-moving science ships, painted white instead of warship gray, began their journey toward the Korthan homeworld. The entire galaxy watched, holding its breath. The media called it the Monarch's folly. They predicted a massacre. The Korthan warlords watched the approaching ships on their scanners. They were baffled. These were not warships. They were tubby, unarmed freighters and research vessels. They were flying directly for Korth, ignoring the prized world of Xylos completely. The Korthan commander, a grizzled old warrior named Gorak, frowned. It made no tactical sense. Was it a trick? A Trojan horse hiding bombs? His scanners confirmed the ships carried no weapons, only organic material and life signs. As the science fleet entered the orbit of Korth, a single open-channel transmission came through. It was from the Monarch himself. Gorak expected a threat, a demand for surrender. Instead, he heard June's calm, clear voice. "A man cannot hear your words if his children are starving. Feed them first, then we will talk." Gorak stood on his bridge looking down at his dying world. He thought of his own grandchildren, their scales growing dull from malnutrition. He thought of the pride that had forced them to take this desperate action. He saw the unarmed ships waiting for permission to land and give his people life. The blockade around Xylos had required all their remaining warships. Korth was defenseless. If the consensus had wanted to destroy them, this was the moment. But they had not sent bombs. They had sent bread, the order was given. The Korthan blockade around Xylos dissolved. The warships turned and headed for home, not in attack formation but in a quiet, hurried retreat. On the surface of Korth, the science ships landed. The mycelian experts working with the Korthan biologists immediately began analyzing the blight. The emergency food was distributed. The starvation was halted. A week later, a new transmission was sent from Korth to the Galactic Core. It was from Gorirak. His voice was heavy with emotion but not anger. "Monarch June," he said, "you did not fight us. You did not threaten us. You saw our pain when no one else did. You have saved our children. The Korthan Syndicate surrenders to you, not to the consensus, to you. We will follow the Mad Monarch." In the War Council chamber on the capital world, the news was received in utter silence. Vorax looked at the reports, her face a mask of stunned disbelief. Her fleets, her battle plans, her entire philosophy of power had been made irrelevant. He had won without firing a single shot. Lorvan, the scientist, looked at June with a new, strange respect. The human had used data, but not as a weapon. He had used it to find compassion. It was a type of logic the Xilian had never considered. June simply nodded, thinking of the people on Korth and Xylos who would go to sleep that night without fear. The galaxy had lost its mind, but for the first time it felt like it was finding its heart. The victory over the Korthans did not bring peace to the royal court. Instead, it made the air even thicker with tension. June's way was working. His simple human solutions were solving problems that generations of logical, strategic thinking had failed to fix. This was a danger far greater than any failure. In the shadows of the great capital, in rooms that were not on any official map, three figures met. Lorvan, the Xilian scientist, Vorax, the Vorg warrior queen, and a new conspirator, Minister Day, the head of the royal household. He was a tall, slender being from a race that prized order and tradition above all else. He was the one who had tried to give June a gray food cube on his first day. "This cannot continue," Minister Day said, his voice a sharp whisper.
"He is unraveling 1,000,000 years of civilization."
"He rules by feeling. The open door, the garden, now this surrender to the Korthans? It is chaos." Vorax slammed a fist on the table, which was made of a material that did not break. "My warriors grow restless. They train for battle, and he sends farmers. He makes us look weak." Lorvan nodded slowly, his four eyes narrowed in thought. "He is a variable the system cannot account for. The scanner found him, yes. But what if the scanner itself is the problem?" The other two looked at him. This was the thought none of them had dared to speak aloud. "The scanner is sacred," Minister Day said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Lorvan countered. "It is a machine. An old one. It traveled to a primitive, unstable world to find him. What if that journey damaged it? What if the human is not a prime soul, but a glitch?" A slow, cold smile spread on Vorax's face. "A glitch, yes, we cannot attack the monarch directly. The crown protects him. The people are starting to like him." She said the word like it was a disease, but we can attack the source of his authority, the scanner itself. Their plan was simple and clever. They would not use weapons. They would use words. They would plant a seed of doubt and let it grow. The Whisper campaign began the very next day. It started in the lower levels of the bureaucracy, among the minor officials who were unhappy with the new, unpredictable monarch. A rumor was spread in quiet conversations. "Did you hear? The energy readings from the scanner were unstable during the choosing." Another would say, "I have a friend in the engineering corps. They say the scanner has not passed its last 3 diagnostic checks." The rumor spread to the media. A respected news network, one that had always supported the old ways, ran a segment titled, "A Question of Integrity. Is our sacred scanner failing?" They did not accuse June directly. They only asked questions. They showed old data taken out of context that suggested minor fluctuations in the scanner's power output. The seed of doubt was planted. Across the galaxy, people who were confused by June's methods now had an explanation. He wasn't wise. He wasn't a new kind of leader. He was a mistake. A cosmic accident. The galaxy had not lost its sanity. Its guiding brain had simply broken. Sue was the one who brought the news to June. She found him in his garden, carefully tying a loose morning glory vine to its trellis. The plants were thriving, a splash of vibrant green and blue in the sterile room. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice tight. "There is a problem." June looked up. He saw the worry on her face. It was no longer the blank mask of a guard. It was the genuine concern of a friend. "What is it, Commander?" "They are talking. The ministers, the media. They are saying the scanner is broken. They are saying it made a mistake when it chose you." June listened. He put down his little piece of tying string. He did not look surprised. He looked sad. "I see," he said softly. "This is treason," Sue said, her hand resting on her weapon. "Give me the order. I will have Lorvan and Vorax and that Snake Day arrested. We have evidence of their meetings." June shook his head. He looked at his plants. "No, don't arrest them!" Sue stared at him, incredulous. "Why? They are trying to destroy you." "They are scared," June said, repeating the words he had once said to her. "When people are scared of change, they break things. They are trying to break the scanner because they are scared of what it means that it chose me." He looked at her, his eyes clear and calm. "If I arrest them, I prove their point. I show that I rule by force, not by right." "Then what will you do?" Sue asked, her voice filled with frustration. "You cannot just let them spread these lies." "I will face them," June said. "But not with soldiers. They have challenged the truth, so I will meet them in a place of truth." He turned and looked at the wall of stars. "They want a new scanning? Fine, I will give them one." He knew it was a risk. The scanner was ancient. If it showed any sign of weakness, the conspirators would win. But he had to trust the machine that had brought him here. He had to believe it had chosen him for a reason. He sent a message to the entire council. He agreed to their unspoken demand. He would stand before the scanner once more in front of the entire galaxy and be tested. The conspirators were thrilled. They were sure the stress of a second unprecedented scan would cause the old machine to fail. Sue was terrified. She saw the trap, and she saw June walking right into it. "It is too dangerous," she pleaded with him the night before the ceremony. "The scanner could malfunction. It could hurt you." June gave her a small, reassuring smile. "The scanner didn't just find a king, Sue. It found a librarian. It must have had a reason. I have to trust that." The next day, the Great Hall was packed once more. The atmosphere was electric with fear and anticipation. Lorvan, Vorax, and Minister Day stood together, their faces a mixture of confidence and greed. They were so close to victory. June stood alone in the center of the hall under the floating dark sphere of the scanner. Sue stood at the edge of the platform, her body tense, ready for anything. The rescanning was about to begin. The fate of the monarchy and the sanity of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Great Hall was silent. The air felt heavy like before a storm. Every being in the room, and billions watching on screens across the galaxy, stared at the single human figure standing under the dark sphere of the sacred scanner. Lorvan, Vorax, and Minister Day stood to the side, their faces hard. They had made their accusations. They had spoken of unstable energy readings and failed diagnostics. The seed of doubt was planted in every mind. June looked small and alone. He wore simple clothes, not royal robes. The scanner crown was on his head, its usual soft glow seeming faint and vulnerable today. Minister Day stepped forward. His voice was loud and clear, cutting through the silence. "The scanner is the foundation of our civilization. Its integrity must be absolute. We must be sure beyond any doubt that the prime soul it found is truly the one meant to lead us. We request a rescanning to prove the machine's stability and confirm the Monarch's worth." It was a formal challenge. The old Monarch, Cathar, would have refused. It was an insult. But June simply nodded. "I agree," he said, his voice calm. "But before you begin, I want to say something." The conspirators looked surprised. They had expected fear or anger, not this quiet acceptance. June looked out at the crowd, at the cameras. He was not speaking to the conspirators. He was speaking to the galaxy. "The scanner did not choose me because I am the smartest," he began. He glanced at Lorvan, or the strongest. His eyes moved to Vorax. "It chose me because you have all forgotten something." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "You have forgotten compassion. You have forgotten that strength is not just in weapons, but in resilience, That logic is empty without wisdom. You have built a perfect logical world, but you left no room in it for kindness, for patience, for the simple act of helping an old woman find a book. In the library on Earth, Mrs. Lee watched the broadcast, her hand over her mouth. You see, my answers is simple, June continued. You call them madness. But is it madness to feed the hungry? Is it madness to talk before you fight? Is it madness to protect a small growing thing? He thought of his garden, and Sue, standing guard, thought of the shattered pot. The scanner did not break, June said, his voice growing stronger. It finally found what the galaxy truly needed to survive. It found its heart, Minister Day sneered. Enough poetry. Begin the scanning! The dark sphere above June's head began to glow. The familiar blue light pulsed out, enveloping him. The rescanning had begun. June closed his eyes. He did not resist. He opened his mind completely. He thought of Mrs. Lee's grateful smile. He felt the worry of the Floran Pilar living in the shade. He remembered the fierce, desperate pride of the Corthans and the relief that replaced it. He felt the warmth of the sun on his garden, the joy of seeing a green shoot break through the soil. He remembered the look in Sue's eyes when she stopped seeing a simpleton and started seeing a person. He poured all of it into the scan, not data, not logic, but feeling. The essence of his humanity. The scanner's light, which was meant to only read June, suddenly flared. It grew brighter than anyone had ever seen. A feedback loop had occurred. The scanner, connected to the crown, was not just taking information. It was giving it. The blue light exploded outwards in a wave. It did not hurt. It was warm. It touched every single being in the Great Hall. And through the broadcast, an echo of it touched every being watching across the network. It was an empathic pulse, a wave of pure, shared feeling. In that instant, Lorvan the scientist felt it. He was no longer looking at data points about June. He felt the simple, elegant beauty of a single kind act. He felt the profound satisfaction of helping one person, without any thought of reward. It was a feeling more perfect and logical than any equation he had ever solved. A tear, something his race had not produced in millennia, formed in one of his 4 eyes. Vorax, the warrior, felt it. She felt the fierce, protective love June had for his garden. She felt the courage it took to stand and protect something fragile, not with a weapon, but with your own body. It was a strength she had never imagined, a strength that came from love, not from hate. Her heart, a stone in her chest, cracked. She understood for the first time what true power could be. Minister Day felt the loneliness of the young man in the giant, empty room. He felt the deep, homesick sadness and the determination to still do good despite it. He felt the weight of the crown, not as power, but as a burden of care. His sneer vanished, replaced by a stunned shame. All through the hall, Thuls, Zillions, Florans, and 100 other races felt it. They felt June's essence, his kindness, his patience, his unwavering belief in them. On worlds across the galaxy, the same thing happened. A factory worker felt the Monarch's respect for his labor. A pilot felt his trust in her skill. A parent felt his deep care for all children. They didn't hear words. They felt the truth of his soul. The light faded. The scanner sphere floated calmly, its blue glow returning to normal. The voice that spoke was the same as before, but to everyone who heard it, it sounded different. It sounded, sure, scanning complete. Prime Soul confirmed. The Monarch is June. There was no cheer, no loud celebration. The silence was deep, but it was a peaceful silence. It was the silence of understanding. Lorvan slowly bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect from his people. Vorax placed a clenched fist over her heart, the Vorg sign of unwavering loyalty. Minister Day sank to his knees, his head bowed low. The conspiracy was over. It had been destroyed not by laws or weapons, but by the undeniable truth of a good heart. June opened his eyes. He looked around the hall. He saw the change in their faces. The confusion and anger were gone. In their place was a new, calm clarity. He saw Sue. She was standing at attention, but she was smiling. It was a small, proud smile. The galaxy had fully lost its old sanity, its perfect, logical, and lonely sanity. The madness of compassion, the chaos of empathy had taken its place. June, the librarian from Busan, remained their king. His reign of simple human wisdom had not ended. It had only just begun.